Welcome back to another episode of Metaverse in the News, where we kind of track what some of the big stories are in the past week that's driving both enterprise and cultural adoption of the Metaverse, and what we see the trends are going forward. So I'm joined again with my co-founder of Get Real, Rob Merrilees. And Rob, let's get right to it. Let's talk about another big brand jumping into the Metaverse this week with the Wendyverse. For if you hadn't seen the article, I guess Wendy's has got a new metaverse space that's launching on Meta Horizons. It's got some pretty unique gamification type interactions that you can make with burgers, fries, all the different Wendy's products. I'm sure we can talk a lot about the experience, Rob, but just kind of overall, like, what does it mean when some of these big brands that we're used to seeing in commercials and TV during some of the biggest events on television jump into the metaverse with events like this?
Well, Wendy's, like others, have I think they feel some pressure to get into the metaverse. I think there's a couple of motivators. One is that they see others starting to do it, right? So Chipotle has been in, I think McDonald's has been in, Wendy's now is going in, although Wendy's is actually going in a way that's a little different. You can't order food. It's more of a gamification. If you think of McDonald's Happy Meals from way back when, this may be another, kind of variation of that, and entertainment, get a reason for the kids to ask their folks to go to Wendy's if it's something that's location based, so that, in other words, like, you couldn't play the game unless you were geographically close to the store. I think that there's another motivator though too, which I think genuinely these companies aren't just feeling so-called competitor pressure to do it, but I think they're also genuinely interested in what's going to transpire once they launch these sorts of efforts. And I think they're all experimenting, right? Nobody has figured it out yet. Nobody has a recipe for trying to convert these experiences into dollars just yet. But we'll see what happens. It does seem though that it's, several brands a week now are announcing, and that's anything from, restaurants and fast food joints to fashion, Estee Lauder, Forever 21, to banks as well, like JP Morgan and HSBC in the last month or two. So there's a lot of different reasons for these companies to get in, and I think they're all trying to probably pay attention to what everybody else is doing, but also trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the experimental point that you made. To me, this is all put your toe in the water. I don't think the true power of if all the metaverse can ever bring us is the game where you can throw the fry into the Frosty, or you can slide the burger along in a shuffleboard type game, then a lot of businesses are going to go down that are backing on the metaverse. That said, I think people are trying to be in there. I think it's experiential marketing. It's another way for people to connect with brand, different audiences in different ways, and they're waiting for the big unlock. The big unlock is going to be, how do I direct commerce, e-commerce in these platforms? How do I sell? How do I extend sales of my product? Which is very interesting to think about when you think about a restaurant brand, but I'm sure they're thinking about it, others will. And just having a chip on the table, your toe in the water, is going to make you that much more ready to react when these types of issues get solved with these platforms. We know Meta's thinking about it. We know other host platforms are thinking about ways. You've seen crypto integrations. I don't know if that ultimately is what drives it mainstream, but it could. But just as the onset of some of these e-commerce solutions that are going to be present in the metaverse, I think that it makes sense for all these major brands who have always been creative marketers, who have always pushed the envelope with the way that they interact with their customer bases, have a seat at the table for when it hits, if it does hit, and they'll know how to apply it. Ways to connect real world real world with metaverse. So what does that NFT token get me in the real world, right? I don't just get, a t-shirt, or I don't just get a Frosty, but how does that connect me with merchandise that I could go into a physical brick and mortar store and redeem? So it'll be interesting to see how they develop these strategies going forward and where the innovations lie, but more and more brands getting in each and every day. And I do feel like they're just there to see what everybody else is doing and be ready to pounce when a clear path to commerce shows itself.
I saw a good one earlier this week with Major League Baseball. Yesterday or the day before, they announced that they're going to offer an NFT digital ticket as a souvenir if you actually went to that game, had access to the game, had a ticket to the game. And their angle is this, and it makes a lot of sense to me, and it is a good way to take advantage of the metaverse, which was that people, since they no longer have, in many cases, physical tickets, right? They've got it in their Apple Wallet, they have it on their phone, they end up not having a souvenir from the game. And so what Major League Baseball announced the other day is that if you actually have a digital ticket to the game, you can go ahead and buy an NFT, which will be a souvenir ticket, and that they're going to put a little a little video clip attached to that NFT, which then gives you something that you can collect, you can host over the years in the same way that you might have collected physical tickets and kept them displayed somewhere in your home or at your office. And I thought and they're going to market it for, I think, less than $10. And to me, that actually solves a real world problem, a desire that's no longer able to be fulfilled now that everything's moved to digital ticketing. So yeah, the Wendy's of the world are going to need to figure out similar ways that add actual value, not just have, as you say, some game experience where you use a cheeseburger to do something that you didn't, other than to eat it, a digital cheeseburger, that is.
I want to bring up another big brand announcement, so to speak, or enterprise announcement in the metaverse in the last week or so. Accenture, Rob, came out and not really to many people's total surprise, but they announced their Metaverse Continuum Business Group. Big fanfare with that. They went out on a press release, aligned, potentially over 800 people internally to the effort going forward, or what might grow to, at least 800 people. What does it mean when a company like Accenture makes an announcement like this? I mean, I've got some thoughts. To me, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. To me, like, nothing's bigger enterprise-wise than Accenture. That means government. That means some of the biggest corporations in the world that work together with Accenture. It's, Accenture venture funds that can make investments in metaverse platforms to kind of help grow those businesses, much in the way they've done in other technology verticals and advertising and media over the years to bring that value to their clients. To me, nothing is more of a right down the middle Main Street USA business strategy for the metaverse than seeing someone like Accenture come out and make this announcement and formalize really what we assume that most of the big consulting firms are doing. But curious to see what else you thought about it.
Sure, as you say, not a big surprise. They bought 60,000 Quest headsets last fall, and that was for internal use, identified as being for internal use. But even then, I mean, you and I talked about back then about how that was a precursor to getting their internal folks familiar with the technology so that they could start to then do something like this and start to offer it to their clients. What I find a little surprising about it is that it happened so fast and that it was so formal, right? That, like, they could have integrated that capability or that knowledge set and service offering within their existing practice groups. But what they've done is they've actually, as you point out, taken they've decided to create a metaverse consulting group, which will then no doubt help those same clients. And I think probably over time, they'll probably embed metaverse expertise within the practice areas. But I think they felt that the initial effort would be better served if they dedicated an entire group to it and then just kind of farmed those folks out to the other service practice areas for the client's benefit.
I know that Accenture also has a big, one thing that'll be interesting to see is the connections they make with the blockchain. Accenture already has a pretty big blockchain group internally,
Right.
and they're trying to be thought leaders on the enterprise side for blockchain. So not the traditional crypto, not the NFT piece, but really what is, the immutable database aspect of blockchain and how businesses can leverage that and not just create another way to have a database, but how can it be, truly an advantage for your business going forward. With as much as they're doing on the blockchain side and trying to be global leaders and thought leaders on that for big enterprises, it'll be interesting to see what that can mean for the Metaverse group. I mean, there's obviously a lot of tie-ins there, not as mature as some of the more traditional enterprise uses or potential uses for blockchain. But in terms of what they can offer their clients, in terms of like that leadership or thought leadership they can put into that group, it'll be interesting to see how that product offering either grows or combines. I wouldn't be surprised they ultimately wind up being together in some regards, but another interesting tie-in that I thought that might be behind this push into Metaverse as well is to support what they're doing on the blockchain side.
For sure. And the adoption, it's seeping into all aspects of people's lives, right? And with Zuckerberg's announcement, as we've talked about before, in the fall, with Facebook changing its name to Meta, makes it subject of interest for the mainstream media. It makes it a subject of interest for those that hadn't been paying attention, I guess. And so when Accenture comes down the pike and says, hey, we're going to create this dedicated unit to do metaverse consulting, it's just one more way in which people have to kind of now pay attention, and it's a little safer choice, right? To go advocate for that in your own firm. If you have firms like Accenture or Deloitte and the others endorsing the idea and the direction of the technology and the opportunities that it'll bring.